Hey, welcome back. Thanks for watching our videos. I hope you've been enjoying them. I've got some pretty exciting news. In a couple weeks, we're going to be actually meeting in person, which I'm looking forward to. And these are probably going to end or change. But for the time being, we're going to keep looking at the book of Luke. It's stuff Jesus said. So I hope you watched our videos from last week on Wednesday that we posted about what Jesus said in Luke chapter 6, talking about the Beatitudes and then the woes or the things that you got to watch out for. And so today we're going to build on that. We're going to look at Luke chapter 6. We're going to start in verse number 27 and go through some things. Now, a lot of the stuff we're going to cover today, you've probably heard before. Matter of fact, you don't even have to be a Christian to have heard a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here for the next few minutes. But one of the most common things that Jesus is quoted with saying is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's really good practical advice. We hear that a lot. Matter of fact, people that aren't even religious typically practice that type of thinking because it's a pretty sharp way of doing life. But also some things you might be familiar with are things like turn the other cheek. Like if someone hits you, turn the other cheek. You're probably familiar with that one. Or love your enemies, which again, something Jesus is credited with saying according to Scripture and things that we hear from other places now, not just from the Bible, which is really cool. Both of those things that I just mentioned are way easier to talk about than they are to do. And that's really what we're going to get at today, is that most of the time I really think that we like the idea of what Jesus had to say, but when it comes time to actually doing the things that Jesus told us to do or asked us to do, that's when it becomes a little more difficult. A lot of times people hear what Jesus has to say and they just chuck it out the window like a used Slurpee cup or something after you get done with that, right? We're really good at knowing the right things, but doing it not so much. And so you've got to remember when we look at this that Jesus just finished talking about the Beatitudes. So blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, and he goes on and explains those things. Woe to you, etc. You've got to remember that Jesus was talking to a group of people that had decided to follow him, okay? Now, there's other people that were there, that were listening to what Jesus had to say that weren't his disciples, but when you look at Luke chapter 6, you'll find that he was actually speaking directly to his disciples, the people who said, I want to follow you. I want to do what you're doing. And so Jesus said, if you're going to do that, he says in verse 27, but I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you. And from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. Now, again, you've probably read these verses before, or you've been in our church, you've probably heard somebody talk about them somewhere in your lifetime. And so what I love about this passage is that when Jesus starts out, he says, look, if you're truly serious, you need to listen up. It says, to those who hear, or I say to you who hear. If you're paying attention, if this is really you, here's what's got to happen. You got to listen up a little bit. And everything he mentions here. So you're supposed to love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and then pray for those who abuse you. It's a completely unnatural way of doing things, right? When we do stuff, or people do things to us that are wrong, typically our human response, our very physical response is to reject that, to fight that, to push back. Matter of fact, it's a very American way of looking at things. If someone messes you up, you're going to mess them up back. That's how that works in our culture. But Jesus is saying that you have to respond to the evil around you in a completely different way than how you feel you should respond. It forces you to rely on God for peace and comfort and happiness, because if you can't respond in those ways, what are you supposed to do? Some people read this passage and they ask the question, well, am I just supposed to let people walk all over me? Am I supposed to become a doormat that people wipe their feet on? And I don't think that's the case here. The way of thinking really, like I said, pushes back against our culture, what you've grown up thinking. Maybe you've heard things like, you've got to stand up for yourself. You got to put yourself out there. Or maybe your parents may have said this, like, you better not start a fight, but if one happens, you better be the one to finish it, right? That's ingrained in our culture. So the answer is that no, you aren't a doormat. It just doesn't matter how people treat you or if they take away your stuff. And here's why I say that, because you are God's kid and you represent him. And he explains that in the next couple of verses here that we're going to look at in our next video. See, it doesn't matter that people treat you in a bad way, because at the end of the day, when God comes, everything's going to change anyway. And so the things that we have now are cheap compared to what God has promised us in the future. So what he's going to get at, what you're going to see at the end of this passage here that we're looking today, is that God expects us to be merciful, even as he has been merciful. And when you look at everything that Jesus did and everything that God does, people rejected him, they hated him, they abused him, they spoke badly about him. But in all those situations, Jesus was merciful towards them and continued to offer them a path to have a relationship with God. And that's what Jesus is getting at here. That it's not about making a name for yourself. It's not about making sure all of your rights are protected. What matters is that you're representing God to these people and you're helping them understand what a relationship with him looks like. And we demonstrate that mercy and that grace and that forgiveness to them. We're going to come back at our next video here in just a second and look at the next set of verses. So stay tuned. Watch the next one with us. See you in a second.